Oh, this is the fuck episode.
All right, in this first one, we're talking about we started. I was looking down at my phone. Hello and welcome to the Tough Cut Podcast. I didn't finish drafting the text I was trying to send, but I guess they don't get a response for the next hour.
Oh no, Matthew's gonna totally forget about that text.
I'm Matthew.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Jake.
And we are the Tough Cut Podcast. Welcome back to part 3 of the Animal Protagonist bracket. This time with all animal protagonists, hopefully.
Well, I mean, I guess so.
I'm gonna get into it. I've actually thought long and hard.
I bet you have.
I have some good words about. Oh no.
So coming up at you in the first half of this episode, we've got Paddington 2 versus the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. And then in the second half of the episode, we've got The Life of Pi versus Fantastic Mr. Fox.
This is our semifinals. We're really getting into it this week.
Yeah. And can I just say, before I started, before we actually logged on to Discord, you know how I used to eat limes as a kid?
Where is this going?
No,
I do know this. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I do know this.
All right. I used to eat limes as a kid, and more importantly, I used to drink lime juice. And before logging into Discord, why I was late is I found one of those little fake bottles of like lime, and I had the strong urge to like guzzle it, and I did. I didn't guzzle the whole thing. I just squirted a bunch to the back of my throat, and I think I'm only now starting to feel the repercussions of it. So
the ones that look like little green like balls, like a little green like.
Yeah, I squirted that directly onto my uvula. I just thought you guys should know going forward. I thought everyone should know going forward.
This is the lime episode.
This is the lime episode. Sponsor us, lime. Lime? I don't know what company.
Big Lime.
Big Lime.
We're looking at you, the Lime Lobby. You can't get past me. I know you're out there.
Oh, gosh.
Cool. You got anything to add, Jake, before we hop into the episode?
Yeah, I do. I forgot that was what I was supposed to be doing. Spoiler alert, guys. This is a spoiler alert. We reminded ourselves to do it before we talked about the episodes. Before we got to talk about the episode. I'm going to restart all that. Spoiler warning, before we dive into these movies, we're gonna... I'm fucking up. It's the lime juice.
Jake, can you say it's the lime juice?
It's the lime juice. I'm getting too into the lime juice. Okay, spoiler warning. I'm gonna really reset.
Spoiler alert, boys and girls.
Spoiler alert.
This is my moment. This is my job. This is my one thing that I have. Spoiler warning, we are going to be spoiling these movies in depth. We will be talking about them. Probably some plot points we'll get. If you made it to episode 3 and you haven't watched these movies, thanks for listening to us. Actually, I don't really mind. As long as you're listening, that's all I care about. Just kidding. Please watch the movies, but we will be spoiling them. All right.
Cool.
I want to throw out there too, just at the beginning of the episode, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks.
Tell one friend about the show. One friend only.
And tell that friend to tell 2 friends, and tell them to tell 3 friends, and then start selling Cutco knives. Sponsor us, Cutco knives.
Jake is still looking for a job.
I'm still looking for a job. I just did a fake interview the other day. It sucked. It was a scam. You know, my challenge to our audience is tell one enemy. Tell an enemy. I don't want you to tell your friends. Tell an enemy and see where that goes.
Because if you know what your enemies are listening to, you can control their brains.
Ah.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. All right, let's hop into the first matchup of today's episode. I guess I will go ahead and introduce Paddington 2.
Go for it.
Paddington 2, released in 2017, directed by Paul King. As I've said before, follows the story of the oh-so-lovable Paddington. He's a bear. He lives with the Brown family. And he wants to buy the very bestest birthday present for Aunt Lucy. So he's trying to, pick up some jobs, pay for it, but then it gets stolen and Paddington adjusts to life in prison.
Wow, you skipped a lot there. Okay.
It all turns out okay in the end.
Spoiler! Oh my god! Yeah, we really were lucky to have my great spoiler warning in the beginning because you just spoiled the movie.
Anyway, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, Alex.
SpongeBob and his thick, juicy butthole. I don't know why I said butthole. It's his cheeks that are so luscious. SpongeBob's luscious cheeks go on an adventure to find a crown and return it before Mr. Krabs is eaten up by King Neptune, I guess. It kind of seems like he's going to eat him, doesn't it? Let's get into that. Man. Is King Neptune going to eat Mr. Krabs? He's going to boil him alive. What's up with that?
let's
I think
forget the podcast. Let's really dive into this one. What's up with that?
What is King Neptune? He said specifically he's going to fry Mr. Krabs.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can fry something without eeating it. Sure,
impossible. Literally impossible.
Fry food, but like I know some things that have been fried that weren't eaten.
What? What? Are you gonna give literally just one example?
Nah. I think it's funnier that way.
I eat any food. Even you should know, Matthew, that I'll eat pretty much anything that comes to my mouth.
I do know after living with you that yes, you will eat essentially literal garbage to sustain yourself.
Yeah.
Would you eat SpongeBob's thick, juicy ass?
Yeah, no question. Not even fried. You don't have to fry that for me.
Do you think SpongeBob's butthole is like one of his normal holes, or do you think it's a different hole?
I think he doesn't have one.
Well, based on what we've seen, because if we refer to the show, because we do see other sequences in which SpongeBob does not have pants on. And he's just like full square, he's doesn't have big voluptuous cheeks. So that actually implies, how he changes form to like look like different things. Does that mean in the movie he intentionally popped those cheeks up, to give us a good look?
Yeah, maybe. I'm glad we're finally getting into all the notes that we took on the SpongeBob SquarePants movie.
SpongeBob's an exhibitionist. Also, wait, okay, isn't it crazy that the new SpongeBob movie comes out tomorrow? This wasn't planned, but hey, Paramount Plus sponsor
if
us?
anyone knows anyone at Paramount Plus, anyone in the Big Lime lobby, send them our way. toughcutpod@gmail.com.
Anyway, so how about we hop into talking about movies in comparison a little bit?
Yeah. So for me, a comparison that I kind of want to bring up, just in talking about SpongeBob, and we didn't talk about it too much, was the fact that the blending of live action, like in these sequences, I don't know if it was it wasn't the first time SpongeBob does this. SpongeBob does this as a recurring bit. And it's funny in the TV show, like it's like funny and like also kind of jarring. That one ape episode, like I know so many people who are scared of that episode, like actually terrified of that episode.
Funny you mentioned that specifically, because there is I don't know what to call it, fan theory, I suppose, known as skin theory, that essentially all the characters of SpongeBob, if there's a skin theory expert out there, they'll probably correct me in the comments and be really mad that I mischaracterized this. But that basically all the people are like just wearing fish skins. And they reference it's like a 50-minute video, and they reference all the times that there are evidence of someone wearing another person. It happens a lot in SpongeBob, and that gorilla is like one of the big examples, because you have Patrick in the gorilla suit, but then you also have the gorilla,
But here's the thing. If that's true, then it's not an animal protagonist.
Yeah, I guess if skin theory is correct, then SpongeBob is not an animal protagonist.
Holy shit!
Well, I think you have to turn that around though and apply skin theory to Paddington too, because can bears go to prison?
He's a wizard.
Because he's a wizard. He's a little wizard boy that was turned into a bear.
So that's another fun fact. Is actually there was a case once in Alaska wherein a bear had killed I think like 2 or 3 people in one sort of feeding season, in open season before they hibernate. So they actually, I believe, flew the FBI out to use forensic tactics that they use to catch serial killers to try and track this bear down. So can a bear go to prison? Maybe, but I feel like they probably just shot it. I don't remember the end of that story.
No, he got acquitted. The glove didn't fit. No, okay. The comparison I want to make is that I don't really like the use of like live action in SpongeBob. I think it's like super jarring at the end. Like David Hasselhoff is fun, but I just think it just felt like, I don't know, it's like uncomfortable for me to the point where it isn't comedic. While I think Paddington like blends it, like again, like that's a wizard bear.
I do think, like, personally, it's not like something that bothered me. Sure, I think that in this bracket, we've seen other movies execute the animated character playing off real people much better. It's also a much smaller portion of the runtime we see it in this movie. However, I think that there are more just really interesting implications led by the world building we see of the real humans. Like that diver, I feel like I am branching into the territory.
In the diving suit.
Yeah, like, you know, there's just like really strange, goofy things like that. Or that, you know, apparently in the SpongeBob universe, people's pecs can really just transform like that. You know?
I think that's just David Hasselhoff.
Fair point. I'm probably real life David Hasselhoff can do that too.
A smooth transition from that. There's a deleted scene in SpongeBob where Sandy Cheeks is also out of the water, and they just had like a live action squirrel.
Wait, what?
And
that's fantastic.
There's a deleted scene that they were working on where Sandy was just going to be a real squirrel. And instead of taking David Hasselhoff back to Bikini Bottom, they were going to take a bus. And Patrick was going to be so disgusted seeing Sandy as like a living squirrel that he would start throwing up.
Yeah, that's such a shame because actually rewatching this movie, I didn't notice it as a kid because like it's just a fun, like good movie. But I was kind of upset that characters like Sandy, Squidward, like they didn't get a chance to be in this movie at all.
I do love though the way in which Squidward is written out, where SpongeBob's like, and the three of us, and he's just like, nope.
Yeah, but then he also gets some more like he gets some stuff like trying to stop playing whatever. But like again,
scenes.
The other they get like one line. I don't know. I really like Sandy growing up. I think that was one of my favorite characters. So I was just like, why you say like that?
I feel like it's unlocking a secret piece of your character.
Just because I talked about Jessica Rabbit before does not mean those feelings equate to Sandy Cheeks, okay?
Sandy's
yes, her name is Sandy Cheeks. Oh, God, oh no. I'm going to be labeled a furry or like I don't know.
Jake's trying to take a walk on the wild side.
To really steer this question away from that, that's Scarlett Johansson, right? That's Neptune's daughter?
Yeah. It's her when she was a kid.
Isn't that wild? She has such incredible range.
I think she could play anyone.
She can really play a tree. A fish, sorry. Anyone. So versatile.
I think, I'm pretty sure they actually did mocap for that one.
No, this is skin theory. We're applying
this
skin
is where
theory
Andy
right
Serkis got it from.
So in another point of discussion, just to move us away from skin theory for but a brief moment, I do think there's actually a really interesting parallel between SpongeBob and Paddington 2 in terms of their like messaging and how their characters are viewed by the world versus how like their characters view the world. I think that there is like a lot of shared naivete between SpongeBob and Paddington in both of these characters. Obviously, SpongeBob's is a little more explicitly like it's okay to be a kid, whereas Paddington's is like, hey, just like embrace positivity and be who you are.
Yeah, I agree. This was also something, I'm glad you mentioned it, that I wanted to get into because I think that SpongeBob's presents it as a very like limited view because they frame it in a very like, what's masculinity, what's it mean, like being an adult is basically being a man, and they do critique that in a way, but I also think they do fall prey to it, where I think Paddington was about like more than that. It was more familial, more like universal, saying, oh, be the good you wish to see in the world, basically, like be overly positive, kill them with kindness, which I think is a more universal message. Like they do battle masculinity in SpongeBob. I'm not saying they're not afraid to not be or be feminine or whatever. Like the Goofy Goober scene, like is evident of that. Have you seen SpongeBob in that, or even Patrick in his what is it called?
Fishnet
thigh-high
stockings.
Fishnet stuff. It's great, and they really do try to battle that. But I do think they plan a lot of it around masculinity in a weird kind of. I wish they open it up more.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It stems from an issue of like, because they frame it around him not being a man, it limits it to that conversation, versus Paddington is overwhelmingly just about being positive in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Being a good human being rather than what does it mean to be a man.
What does it mean to be a man? A miserable pile of secrets? That one's for all you Dracula X Rondo Blood fans out there.
Wow.
Dracula.
Wow. All three of you, I'm proud of all three of you who are probably listening to this podcast. I do think it's interesting because, like, if we look at Paddington, and he does also go to jail and is surrounded by predominantly men, and it also, tackles masculinity in that way.
I think that Paddington, though, tackles it in a little bit more of a subversive way. Maybe not quite subversive way, because it's more just like, hey, all these gruff big dudes that you'd think to be very traditional men aren't actually such traditional men. So in that case, subverting of masculinity, but I think that's a pretty typical way to subvert masculinity, to have like...
Even the villain, I mean, Hugh Grant is like a theater, panache and whatever dude. It's still a dude, still like, again, like a very easy way to subvert it. But yeah, maybe they could have addressed it a little better, or just included more female characters for that matter. They could have mixed the prisons up,
I mean, I do think in terms of female characters in Paddington, obviously the most significant is probably Sally Hawkins' character, Mary Brown.
Isn't it crazy that, okay, this is just one thing randomly I noticed I didn't get to say before. Sally Hawkins, literally when she was drowning with Paddington, I was like, this is Shape of Water. Sally Hawkins, once again, was underwater with an animal who is more human than animal. This is typecasting, guys. This is how she got cast in Shape of Water, right? This was her audition.
Yeah.
It blew my mind. Luckily, she didn't do anything with Paddington.
Because she can pull off emotional scenes really well underwater. Yeah, that's what this movie proved.
Yeah.
Wow. I actually do love Sally Hawkins. I have a fat crush on her in this movie specifically. She warms my heart.
Jake trying to get her to cheat on her husband
yes.
of a very long time and break up the Brown family and break little Paddington's heart when he has to live through split custody.
I'm trying to like
would that break his heart,
Paddington.
or would he just have a bigger family?
Two families.
True. I'm trying to break him. I'm trying to have him break his one rule about optimism, and really.
Wow.
I'm kidding. I love you, Paddington. I
Audience, you couldn't see this, but Jake did a motion with his hand as if he was choking the life out of Paddington. I just want you to know that.
You don't know. It could have been the husband. I was metaphorically choking. You don't know. Guys, why did Paddington get sick and almost die at the end of that movie?
Yeah.
Like part of me was really hoping when Paddington awoke from his coma, when he asked how long it was, they'd be like, it's been 20 years, Voldemort has returned. Boom, Harry Potter cinematic universe. But I know he literally almost died in this movie, and so did SpongeBob and Patrick. They almost died. Also, I actually think their scene was the one instance where the live action actually did get me as a kid, and even like rewatching it now, like when they dried up and they're like, I'm a good, like that was it's a good death scene. I didn't know SpongeBob could have a good death scene, but it does. And it's better than Paddington's death scene.
It's different than Paddington's.
I have to say, Jake, you talked about how you don't really like the use of the live action in SpongeBob, but I think that twist of them getting picked up by the Cyclops and then waking up and being in the like fishbowl, I thought was a very fun, interesting use of live action.
But that's, again, we're getting too deep into skin theory, guys.
Which really is looming in the background of this conversation in a pretty uncomfortable way for SpongeBob's chances moving forward. If they're just people in skin suits, what does that mean?
What does that make us?
Hey, there is no evidence that Paddington Brown is not a little man in a bear suit.
He's a wizard. How dare you?
He has a Twitter account and he's very sweet on it. So I'd watch what you say.
He's very sweet. I love Paddington's Twitter, actually. It's one of my favorite accounts.
Another point that I just kind of want to talk about a little bit is each movie's approach to humor. Obviously, the SpongeBob movie is a little bit more explicitly like a comedic adventure, whereas Paddington's is also still a comedy, but I think a little bit more like adventure,
like
family
familial
movie.
Drama. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that they have one, like overlapping ways that they're using humor, but two, like very different, primarily very different approaches to humor. which I think is interesting, at least from my perspective.
Yeah. Paddington feels more like cute humor in a way where like a lot of it revolves around Paddington being adorable and stuff. I do think Paddington does have some great lines though that feel very snappy and good, but SpongeBob's are like very satirical and witty in that way.
Yeah, like that was kind of the like categories I would pose it into is like Paddington has like this like these subsects of like this setup callback humor.
Yeah.
Versus SpongeBob being a little bit more satirical, having the like a bit more like irreverent humor or, you know, kind of like wacky surrealist humor.
To me, SpongeBob feels very much like a series of sketches, like it could have been written as. The scenes are very, because I think it's like a linear adventure. The scenes are very like you have a set piece and you have another set piece and another set piece that each kind of feel like their own thing. I mean, I think in terms of comedy, I think SpongeBob takes it out. I definitely appreciate the comedy in SpongeBob more than in Paddington. Like, I agree that Paddington has its gems, but I think overall, to me, SpongeBob is a funnier movie.
It's also more memorable. I mean, like, yeah, I think I'd agree. SpongeBob is definitely like it hits way more and has like more like memorable lines. Like I can think of funny moments in Paddington, but I can't really think of like except for like
my favorite joke in the SpongeBob movie is right at the end. The Goofy Goober Rock song, you have that scene where Patrick is in the thigh-high boots and fishnet stockings, just like standing over SpongeBob. And then at the end, after the song, he walks over and he's still wearing the fishnets and the thigh-high boots and lowers SpongeBob, who's in his wizard outfit, like from the rope and dangling from the ceiling. So funny. Such a good joke. Another conversation, the way that side characters are handled in this movie in these two movies, because I haven't seen Paddington 1. So like, are all the like neighbors and people in the neighborhood characters from the first Paddington movie where he like wins them over? Or is that just in this movie?
They're not like specifically dedicating time in the first movie to him winning over each individual neighbor.
I know it seems that way. I was going to say for someone who doesn't like, who didn't watch the first one, it definitely seems like the neighbors were the crux of the first one.
To me, it seemed like all those neighbors were characters who were coming back and it was like, oh, look at these neighbors who were in the first movie. So I guess, I don't know. I don't know if that's like just because I didn't see the first movie, but the like street guard or like the neighborhood watchman, I feel like played a bigger role in the first movie, but I don't know. But like, it seems like his character, I was like a little confused by his character. Like, why does this guy hate a little bear? The bear's so cute.
It was actually a dude who snuck on set. They couldn't edit his scenes out. He was that disruptive. He just kept coming back.
That is also, I believe, specifically included in that way as a commentary on anti-immigration in the UK. Like that's the purpose of the character.
Paddington really has it all.
No, Paddington slaps. And also like kind of what I talked about before, like you don't really get Sandy or Krabs or, you know, Squidward to a certain extent.
I want to,
and a lot of the other side characters.
I mean, I wouldn't argue though that like the neighborhood characters are like
what I would
supporting
say
characters.
I would say the jail people are.
Yeah, like they play the role of the supporting character. I would say that like in terms of not necessarily directly supporting characters, but Hugh Grant as Phoenix Buchanan is like a way more interesting and fun villain than anything we get to see in SpongeBob. Like, so I would almost put him with the amount of screen time he gets as like much closer to a side character. Sure, the I can't remember what the like hitman that Plankton Sen's name is.
Dennis.
Dennis. He gets a couple of his own scenes, but I don't think they come
voiced by Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
He has his own issues. He has his own issues that he needs to work out.
Yeah, I don't think that Dennis comes close to Phoenix Buchanan as a villain to me.
Also, Mad Eye Moody, which that's not his actual the actor in the Harry Potter franchise who plays Mad Eye Moody, who plays the cook in the Paddington. I think he has a pretty fun and pretty exciting, and like I like also all the other jail people.
He's a pretty he has like a substantive character arc as a side character.
Yeah, definitely.
Are we ready, guys?
I guess.
I think so. I think we're ready.
Let's take it to a vote. All right, who wants to go first?
I mean, I can.
I believe in you, Matthew.
I voted for Paddington 2.
Nice.
I don't think to anyone's surprise.
Cute little bear. Yeah. Jake, how about you?
I voted for Paddington 2. I also voted Paddington 2.
And that makes 3 of us 2 times in a row. Paddington 2.
Wow.
3 votes, unanimous. It's just, Such a cute little bear. He's so charming. I
really
love the
is.
heck out of him.
He is so charming. Not that the SpongeBob movie is a great movie, and I do think it's funnier.
Holds up better than it has any business holding up.
Surprisingly well. It's a surprisingly funny movie.
Yeah.
But should we get into the second half of the semifinals?
With Paddington 2 advancing to the finals, we've got Life of Pi versus Fantastic Mr. Fox battling to see who gets the other seat.
That's very exciting.
Very exciting.
Very exciting.
Okay, Jake, calm it down. I get it.
I'm so fucking excited.
Very exciting.
Tiger. That's our transition, folks. So coming at you, we've got Life of Pi, released in 2012, directed by Ang Lee. It follows Pi, who is stuck out at sea with a tiger, whose name is Richard Parker. After Pi's entire family died, they go on a whole spiritual, maybe proverbial, maybe real journey across the ocean, and they come out the other side very different people / animals.
Tiger.
You
know what I just realized about this bracket? Yeah, we actually have we had lions, tigers, and bears in this bracket.
Whoa.
Isn't
and
that wild?
oh my, because mouse hunt. All right, we did it. We did it.
Good.
We found a way to talk about
We got
mouse
all
hunt
the
again.
animals. We got all the animals.
Are
we? Is our podcast Noah's Ark? Is this how animals are going to live on after society is destroyed? After it inevitably collapses?
Actually, I think it's that full scale. I just did air quotes recreation of Noah's Ark that's in like Kentucky or whatever.
Wow, Kentucky's wild.
Anyway, so introducing the matchup here is Fantastic Mr. Fox, directed by Wes Anderson, 2009. It's just about a fox at a midlife crisis. You know the drill. He steals from farmers. They notice and they try to kill him, and wild hijinks happen. So let's get into it, guys.
Let's get into it.
Get into the foxhole.
War. Is that what our next bracket's gonna be? I don't know.
What, hole? Yeah, guys, focus on the word hole. Holes.
Hop. John Marston. Hop.
James Marston. How dare you?
Sorry.
He's watching over us right now.
He is.
I actually saw a tweet the other day about the movie 27 Dresses. Don't ask what side of Twitter I'm on, but James Marston is in that movie, and it just made me think of James Marston.
Is he the primary romantic interest in that movie?
Yeah.
I feel like he's the primary romantic interest in most movies that he's in.
He's pretty handsome.
Yeah. Sonic and him and their love scene was so good. Way more explicit than
really
I thought it'd be.
Really graphic.
Hey,
honestly, that chili dog.
Their choice to show Sonic's toes, was that a Tarantino film or what?
Yeah.
I'm going with what on that one.
I do hope that Sonic wins the something at the Oscars, though. That would my life would be complete.
If it even gets nominated, that's a big win. That's a big win for everyone.
I was really hopeful when we went into quarantine that Sonic would get nominated, but now on the other side, well, we're still in quarantine.
On the other side,
but on the other side of 2020, I feel like Sonic might not get a nomination.
No, it's going to get edged out.
Heartbreaking.
It's honestly a conspiracy theory to me, because I think they only extended the Oscar contention so they could kick Sonic out.
So they wouldn't have to nominate Sonic.
Yeah.
It's wild to me that Sonic the Hedgehog was the last movie I saw in theaters before everything happened.
Same.
Wow, that's our reality.
Yeah. Anyway, talking about these two movies.
If anyone before we get into kind of comparison, I was thinking a lot about the whole issue / non-issue of if Richard Parker is the protagonist. And I was listening to our other episode and thinking about stuff Alex said. And I think Alex mentioned that if Richard Parker is a separate character and not Pi, then all he does is essentially antagonize him. But I'd like to argue that a character can be antagonistic and still be the protagonist or a protagonist. A really good example that I want to bring up that I thought of that I think Alex will like, he may not agree with, but I think he'll like, is Avengers Infinity War. I think Thanos is 100% the protagonist of that movie. He's antagonizing the entire time, but he follows the hero's journey and essentially wins at the end. While Richard Parker doesn't have like as glorious of an arc as like Thanos might, but I think that he still does have a strong arc, and I think that it's evidenced by him pausing at the edge of the forest. I think that's his like also his like sitting watching the sunset moment, and I don't know. I think that helps anchor us into having Richard Parker, no matter which way you look at it, if he is Pi or if he isn't Pi, him still being a protagonist in my eyes, and that's why it's really interesting to me.
So I'm with you. Thanos is definitely the protagonist of Infinity War. I still don't really think Richard Parker is a protagonist, but I think for the sake of having meaningful and beneficial discussions, I will ignore that fact.
I tried.
I disagree.
Unless someone else has a topic of discussion, something that I think that these movies are very, very opposed in, which is the case in a lot of movies, is, movies are thematically different, crazy. But it just struck me for whatever reason. So you have like the primary thematic through line in Life of Pi, obviously being this relationship between faith and reason. And then I think the broad thematic trends you see in Fantastic Mr. Fox are, one, you kind of have this idea of the midlife crisis. Two, I think the relationship of wild and civilized. Mm-hmm. And then the other one being that I identify being differentness, or like it's okay to be different. And two things on that. One, the idea that like being yourself has come up in so many movies in this bracket, and then also midlife crises have come up so many times in this bracket.
So much
is really fascinating.
It's pretty wild how how often themes of identity and self-discovery are present in movies about animals, where we're looking at like animals as the main characters. I wonder if like cinema uses animals as a way, like we put those themes onto movies about animals, that way we can identify with them more.
I 100% think that's part of it. I think that's why so many of these movies, their main characters are essentially like just people. They're anthropomorphized, creatures, like very much applying human characteristics to animals, rather than like letting these animals be animals, which I know is something we touched on at like the beginning of our first episode in this bracket. Yeah, but I just think it's like kind of an interesting idea that's for sure super, super common. Of course, some of that has to do with facilitation of storytelling. Like it's much harder to tell a movie with just animals being animals than it is to tell one about animals, like,
well, what's interesting actually, especially comparing Life of Pi and Fantastic Mr. Fox, is Life of Pi does have that message, especially when Pi's talking to his father about like, no, like these animals have souls, or like I'm looking at Richard Parker, like I see the soul, and him trying to teach him that hard lesson about when Richard Parker attacks another animal and is wild. Where in like Fantastic Mr. Fox, it's about like, again, really overly, and I think it's credit to Wes Anderson's style, being like overly humanistic, and to the point where it's like no one really acts like a Wes Anderson character as much as they want to, as much as like film dudes want to claim they're that whimsical. But I think it's so interesting looking at Wes Anderson's films, especially that he did a stop motion with animals, that he can apply those like overly humanistic, overly quirky things, like all the symmetry, all the whatever that we kind of seek in the world, and it still feel overtly human. Where, Pi's trying to argue that this animal like does have a soul, it is human, trying to find that spirituality from that. They're both kind of getting at similar things. So I think that is a good point.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder if Pi ever thought about having sex with the tiger.
I don't think so. I do think that it was maybe on the table, but when the tiger sprayed him right in the mouth, actually maybe that's the moment it changed, because doesn't cat pee have like a pheromone in it? Isn't that might be a thing? I feel like I've said so many things that someone could fact check and be like, Matthew's just making shit up.
It's also just revealing a lot about the stuff or that's in your brain It's revealing a lot about Matthew, guys. Piece together the kind of person Matthew is from all these clues in today's episode. We have skin theory and cat piss pheromones. So do with that what you will.
The Alaskan forensics bear hunt. Shoot a message, email us. Who is this man?
What an interesting portrait of Matt this episode is painting.
Portrait of a Matthew on fire. Okay, cool.
I actually, something I want to think about is like the art in these two movies.
That was what I was going to bring that up.
Fantastic Mr. Fox has such a beautiful like orange sunset color palette, but I think Life of Pi also has, I mean, obviously stunning visuals from a CGI perspective. It's interesting to compare the puppetry in Wes Anderson versus Ang Lee's Life of Pi.
So something I thought was super interesting regarding the visuals, and is the reason that I actually noted down this as a topic I kind of wanted to touch on as well, is do you think that there's this interesting relationship? I don't know what the reverse of metatextual is.
Intratextual?
Yeah. Maybe like intratextually, because you have like faith versus reason or fact versus fiction in Life of Pi. And then you have like the practical piece of using puppetry for everything and like having these physical sets for stop motion versus these wide, like breathtaking CGI or like fictional in that sense. So I think like intratextually, the application of that theme to the two movies artistically, not so much super interesting, but just like, I don't know, kind of fun.
Well, it's interesting how they fill space, right? Because in they each have to fill space and put in a certain amount of effort to do it. With the stop motion, it feels in our heads like way more like, or at least in mine, I should speak only for myself, like way more meticulous. Where every single movement you see, like they have to move. Even like when you see the whiskers move on like Foxy's like, you know, head, everything, like all that has to move. When Michael Gambon's character, the Bean, when the farmer like is flipping everything in the RV, he is nonstop moving. All those things are moving like nonstop. Whereas in CGI, not to discredit CGI at all, I think a lot of people do, they have to fill in all those backgrounds, all the scenes with like the jellyfish scene pops in my head, all the flying fish, all the meerkats and stuff like that. Granted, it is a lot of like replication. There are a lot of beautiful scenes in Life of Pi, but it's a lot of, there are a lot of fish. There are a lot of this thing. There are a lot of this thing. It's still beautiful colors, and you still have to put in those things and implement them. But Fantastic Mr. Fox's is a way more detailed, like, okay, so his paw is going to move here with this mug that we made a miniature set of, where this person's fur is going to move this direction, where the like plates are going to be textured this way. So they both fill in, but in very different ways.
There's something really special to it because when you're doing it in puppetry, if it's not perfect, they have to reshoot it. If it's CGI, they can edit the effect, right? So I think there's something really special about that. Another thing that really stands out to me, though, is the actual camera angles that they use. Because in Fantastic Mr. Fox, it's a lot of like straight on angles, and then you'll get interest like from different distances away, and then you'll get very interesting shots that are from like above or something like that. A scene that stands out to me is when they break into the cider. Is that when they're getting the cider and they meet the rat, and you see the like overhead shot of all of the cases of cider?
Oh, so good.
Versus Life of Pi, I feel like you get those same overhead shots occasionally, but it's a lot of like down low looking up. It's just interesting the way that it kind of creates that effect. You'll get shots where Pi looks enormous standing on top of this boat in the middle of the ocean, and you'll get shots that are perspective where it's just endless seas of nothing, and he's so small and alone on this little boat. Yeah, I don't know which I like more, really.
I will say that one shot of Pi and Richard Parker both looking out I think it's probably the poster shot or something, is very great. I really do love that shot.
And my contribution is stop motion really do be taking a long time. And we know that because if you grew up watching iCarly, now available on Netflix, there's that scene where Spencer makes the stop motion, and we know it takes a long time because he's only moved it like 6 inches by the end of the episode. That was like a 20-minute episode. That feels like a long time as a kid.
Again, revealing a lot about Matthew in this episode. A lot about Matthew. iCarly stan.
We should get the guy who played Gibby on the show.
We can't say. I'm sure he's tired of people calling him Gibby. Didn't he have doesn't he have a mixtape or something now? I thought he was one of the ones who has just like a weird, interesting career post, like a wild one.
For whoever's editing the episode, guys, we should get Noah Monk, who plays Gibby on the show.
The guy who played Gibby, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The guy who played Gibby, of course.
Noah Monk, my favorite.
Way to make that transition really smooth for me, Matt. I appreciate it. What is that, Matt? Why did you send us a picture from iCarly.com of a woman holding a giant pair of whitey tighties?
Yeah, those are Gibby's. That's Charlotte Gibson, Gibby's mother on the TV show. It's from the iCarly.fandom.com Gibson family members page.
I can't believe you have that page bookmarked so quick. That's crazy. I made a claymation. That claymation was the first film I ever made. Fun fact: I was 5 years old on a field trip, or not 5 years old. It must have been like 7 or 6 years old on a field trip in California when I lived there, to some like institution where we went to like a college, and they gave us balls of clay and a little like flick camera, and they're like, do something. And I think I still have the DVD somewhere, and mine was about a little dog who eventually just, for no reason at all, kept losing his legs because I didn't know what to do with the clay. And I was so in love with that I had just this dog, and I didn't want to make any other characters. So I was like, I used all my clay on this dog. I guess I gotta make the dogs. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a serial killer.
Yeah, I know that.
Oh, okay. All right. That's good enough for me.
Matt has a sense for these things.
It seems that Dina Dill, who plays Gibby's mother for most of the series, has just been in a variety of mostly TV movies.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
She's in
but good
the
for her.
upcoming,
good for Dina.
Or maybe this movie actually already came out. His Killer Fan, Swim Fan, meets A Star Is Born in this female-led music-centric thriller that puts the audience front row center in a torturous tale of friendship, obsession, and fanaticism. And it appears that Dina Dill is in a wheelchair in the image.
So she's an able-bodied person playing a disabled person.
It might be a different actress.
No longer a Dina fan. I'm sorry. I'm still a Noah Monk fan, though.
Yeah.
Love you,
a jealous
Gibby.
young woman hatches a I don't know. It might be someone else that's in the wheelchair. Feel free to cut this whole portion.
Yeah, we may need to get into comparing again.
Man, George Clooney's good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we're comparing like the actual like protagonists, if we're doing Richard Parker versus Foxy and the performances, like Foxy's so good and so like complex and so
I want to double down on the comment that I made last week. Yeah, when we talked about Fantastic Mr. Fox, that I don't think we addressed enough. That, to your point, saying he's a complex character, I think he is such a fantastically realized, flawed, complicated character, which I feel like we don't see enough of like writers being willing to make their characters properly flawed in like real ways. So it's just so great to see it executed so well.
I think what's so interesting about it, too, is the way the movie frames it of like, oh, well, it's my nature. And it's like playing on the idea that like animals have a nature. But then at the same time, it's like it's not because of that. It's because he's like a well thought out character, you know, I think it's just done so effectively.
Yeah. Because I mean, he does have like he's super patronizing. Even like at the end, he's still a kind of a know-it-all character. Like they don't fix him, especially with that last newspaper article. If you pause it, like he literally, spoilers, he literally says, "I caught my wife like crying on the phone the other day," or "I caught my wife saying like she wasn't happy the other day." And that's like 5 minutes left of the movie. That isn't resolution. That's like, you know, they're still living out there. And he's like, I have to look in the mirror and be okay with that. And like, that's in the movie. in this film, in this adult film, but we're still rooting for Foxy, and he's still doing good as best he can.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where he's not like a flawed, awful character that you want to not root for. He is like a person you understand, and sure, he may have behavior you don't like. Once they're like full bodied in the situation where he's mucked everything up, he is truly doing his best to try and make everything better for his family, for the other animals' lives that he's potentially changed permanently. So like, I do think you still want to root for him.
I think too, what the movie does so well is that when everything is resolved, it doesn't resolve every issue in his life. And I think that is something that movies don't do very often.
But yet he still has those arcs. He still has like the wolf arc about being wild or whatever. He still has even his tail blowing off and him being so gung-ho about, I'm getting that tail, I'm going to do it, whatever, just as obsessed as Bean was. But at the end, even though they do it as a comedic thing, like at the, I'm going to get that necktie, and then they blow them and try to like shoot them out or whatever. He leaves it, and it's a willingness to let things go in his charismatic way that I think carries on throughout it, which I think is really it's interesting that he has multiple arcs, and a lot of these characters do. It's very fun.
I think that's interesting when comparing it to Pi, because I think Pi goes through several arcs based on the different points in his life. Young Pi has a different arc than Pi on the boat, than Pi recounting the story. You know, I think it's interesting to, obviously it's done in a very different way, but looking at how Pi kind of grows, you watch Pi grow, and you at the same time you see where he gets to, which I think is so fascinating.
Remember when Pi just, in order to get out of his, nickname about being like pissing, memorized almost every single number in the irrational Pi? Also, that's just a very clever writing thing.
Yeah, that point is so glossed over. Like that point is just thrown out there.
It's also like, again, just very great writing that Pi wanted to get, in order to get out of his like name, he wanted an irrational like name and stuff, and then like his ration versus like religion stuff. I thought it was very, very smart, very clever.
It's very clever.
Yeah, because pissing is religious and Pi is irrational.
Oh my god! And the tiger peed on him.
Oh my god! Richard Parker is God.
Because when it rains, anyone else as a kid, people say, "Oh, it's God peeing."
Yeah, when it rains, when the sun's out, it's a tiger peeing on you and being turned on. Is that what you said, Matthew?
No, I just think there's some kind of pheromone in cat pee, but that might be a literal lie.
There is that hormone in cats where like they make you like them, though. That's a thing, right?
Is it weed? Do cats make you smoke weed?
It's crystal weed.
Cats walk over and they're like, "Hey kid, do drugs." And you're like, "Yeah, I guess I gotta do drugs now to be friends with these cats."
I love those anti-drug commercials. Sally hasn't been the same since she's been doing drugs. Cut to her fucking steamrolled over and flatlined on that couch. Oh god. Or I learned it from you, Dad.
One day we'll do a bracket on Dare commercials.
Wow, that's fun.
Pissing.
Yeah, I mentioned pissing in my review of this movie on Letterboxd. Go check it out at Tough Cut Pod on Letterboxd.
So are we just doing the outro and not gonna say what we voted for then?
I guess it's time.
I can start.
All right, Jake, who are you voting for?
Yeah, for this one, I think moving on, it's going to be really interesting to have a way more complex, fully realized animal protagonist. So I'm voting Fantastic Mr. Fox.
And I also am voting for Fantastic Mr. Fox.
And for the first time in the Tough Cut podcast, I am also voting for Fantastic Mr. Fox, which means 2 unanimous contenders swept their way through each side of the bracket, going head to head in the finals.
Tell them what the audience gets.
Honorable mentions?
Yeah. We want your honorable mentions for next week.
Please.
That's
literally
right.
Tweet us at them, Instagram, DMs, I don't care, comments. Tell us some. because, we don't have any. Well, we have some in our own heads, but we want your guys's.
Be on the lookout for some posts where we ask you guys for your honorable mentions, and you'll be featured in next week's episode. It will be really exciting.
Maybe we'll include your app. Maybe we won't if we just want to take the credit from you. Hey, it's from 420 Poop Eater. We have.
I'm about to make an account for 420 Poop Eater and have it follow the Tough Cut.
Okay, Poop Feast 420. I know you're out there. We used to watch GSL streams of StarCraft 2 at like 4 a.m. together. I know you're out there, my guy.
We're revealing so much about Matthew. So much about Matthew.
This truly is a portrait of Matthew.
On fire. Fantastic. Wait, we should say what the finals are. We did it.
Yes, in the finals, we've got Paddington 2 going up against Fantastic Mr. Fox. I truly have no idea which movie is going to win.
Oh, it's going to be really tough.
They have a lot of the movies in common. Honestly, it's going
to be the toughest cut. The toughest cut.
Really wish we could just award both the win.
No.
So follow us on socials at Tough Cut Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd. Email us if you have business opportunities or just want to say hi. Thanks so much for listening, guys. This has been the Tough Cut. I guess I'm ending the episode this time.
Bye.
Not if I end it first.